Hello and welcome back to the Simple Politics podcast. The weather may be cold, but the political chat is heating up. What a brilliant line, Diane. Oh, God.
That took me a while.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, team.
I know.
Honestly.
Team. Like, we've done some bad bits before. Like, I'm aware of that.
And this isn't one of them. And yes.
I'm going to read that line from the script again in case people can't believe we actually said it. The weather may be cold, but the political chat is heating up. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Whatever you want it to. That's the beauty of it. It's open to interpretation.
What I want it to mean is that we somehow didn't even say it. But listen. I yesterday had a lump removed from my hand, and it wasn't cancerous. It's all good, but I'm very poorly, and you need to be nice to me today. All right.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
None
of your normal ganging up. That's the point. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. We'll try. Okay?
Yes, boss.
Yes.
Yes, good. Almighty boss. A great one.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I was being nice.
Oh, yeah, of course you were.
Yeah.
It means I'm asking for your sympathy. I'm asking for your help, Charlotte. Coming back with sarcasm and bitterness
it wasn't sarcasm.
Anywhere.
It was genuine. You are the almighty boss.
The political chat might be heating up, but the atmosphere in this team is remarkably chilly.
Oh dear.
Right. So I am on quite a lot of drugs because of this thing. So I will, probably be the same as ever. We do listen. We need to have quite a serious chat at this point. Because I was looking at the accounts and we are not making as much money from advertising as I thought, or they've changed. I don't know what's happened. Like, I'm sure we used to. I don't know. Whatever. We are now at the point where there is a shortfall between people who support the Patreon, who are so kind and wonderful and lovely, and we love you, and the actual money that we need to pay for editing and for all like before. We're not talking about paying ourselves for this. We're just talking about paying for the podcast, paying for itself. So we really need Patreon supporters. Like, it's just really important to us. It's always been important to us for moral support, I suppose you'd say the term is. But it's now really important to us financially as well. We're not the biggest political podcast. We're certainly not the best. But we do exist, and we like existing, and we like existing for you. And you are our listeners, and there aren't millions of you, but we know that you listen and care and ask questions and interact with us and chat. So come join us in the Patreon. Come join us and chat some more. Listen, the lowest tier is £3 a month, and that isn't too much, but if lots of people do it, then it's still really, really useful. Yeah, we love doing this podcast.
We do.
So we just need to need to make it work, and we can only do that with your help. Or like big oil, big pharma coming in and sponsoring us. Like, that's the other way we could do it. I'll write to BP.
Yeah, it's one way
to
go.
There's clear synergy there.
Or big pharma. Like, one of the two. Oxy's got a bad rep at the moment, so I'm sure that OxyContin will sponsor us because they want to reform themselves.
And just in case Tan's big pharma plans don't pan out, please do, if you can support us, go to patreon.com/simplepolitics.
Why are you throwing shade on my big pharma plans?
I'm just having a backup plan.
Okay, a backup plan if Big Oil and Big Pharma don't swoop in. I'm imagining a bidding war between Big Oil and Big Pharma for us.
Yeah, I think that's how it works. Right, let's move on to the top posts of the week. So this is where we look at the most popular posts from the last 7 days. Tatton, what was our third most popular post of the week?
I had 3. It's all about getting people back into work and reducing the welfare bill. Like, loads of people aren't working. Loads more people aren't working than were working before COVID. Loads and loads of people aren't working who, like 20 years ago, the number of young people out of work is like, it's incredible. I should have looked this stat up again before we recorded, but basically, young people today, 1 in 8 aren't working, and they're not looking for work,
and they're not in training. They're not in
training. 1 in 8. That's a really big number, and there's all kinds of reasons for it, and some are very valid, and some are a little less valid. I mean, not working or picking up a bit of a job here and a bit of a job there is a lifestyle that some people choose. And if they can support themselves on that with a bit of help from, I don't know, their parents or somewhere else, I think that's all fine. And the government is just saying, we're not going to pay for you to do that. Welfare is not a lifestyle choice. Welfare is taxpayers' money. And you cannot choose to not do very much, but generally be okay because you're in social housing and because you're on welfare. I know people who quite, openly say that's their choice. That they do a bit of work for extra pocket money, but they're basically okay. And that's part of what this is there to stop. And it's also there because they say that there's so many people on sick, right? And that could be physical health or mental health. And there's a wide perception that sitting at home without money, because benefits aren't generous, right? Without the money to do much, and without a job to go out to, sitting at home and watching Homes Under the Hammer all day, every day, is really bad for you, physically and mentally. So you can get into these cycles of your mental health struggling and your physical health struggling, and then it makes it harder to get back to work. So one of the focuses on this section was, what can you do? How many hours can we get you out the house to work without challenging your, without still making sure you're okay? This bill, this white paper, so a white paper is like when the government tell you what their plans are.
Yeah.
Okay, and their plans, there isn't a super amount of detail in there. So they're quite like, oh, if you don't accept a job, then you're going to cut off your benefits. But it doesn't say what that looks like. It doesn't say what the expectation, what. I mean, for some people, if you cut off their benefits, they're going to die. Like, they're going to have no money for food and heating and stuff like that. So it's really challenging in so many different ways, but there's no detail yet. They're quite detailed on the carrot side, on the way they're going to coach people back into work. They're really happy to talk about that, but it's the specifics about benefit sanctions that is really going to hit. And what we've seen with farmers and what we've seen with the winter fuel payment is that there are people on the margins who miss out. So most people, the idea was people on pension credit are the poorest people, give them the winter fuel allowance, stop giving the king winter fuel payments. Right? That makes sense. Yep. Everyone's down with that. But there are people on the margins who really suffer, who didn't get that money. Rich landowners, take 20% of their money in inheritance because they're rich landowners. They can afford it. They should be paying for our NHS. But there are people on the margins who aren't rich landowners who will still be caught by it. And when you're talking about benefit sanctions, you need to be really, really careful, because those people on the margins must be looked after.
So, yes, more detail to come on this, it seems.
Also, more detail on this on the SP Show episode 2, because worklessness and tax and spend, that's all, I'm going to get really in depth. even more in depth than I did in that quite long answer. On the SP show, it'll be out on YouTube on Saturday, and then on YouTube like forever, because that's how YouTube works.
Yes, our YouTube handle is shockingly Simple Politics, so go find us there.
We focus
Diane.
group that for a while.
Yeah. Diane, what was our second most popular post of the week?
Okay, so second most popular post. This is about breakfast clubs. Not the iconic 80s film, The Breakfast Club, but actual breakfast clubs.
I watched that the other day.
Did you? That's happy coincidence.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
it's a good film.
Yeah. But this is about breakfast clubs with cereal and toast and orange juice and that kind of thing. And it's about them in England's primary schools. Now, this was a Labour manifesto general election pledge that they would provide free breakfast clubs for all of England's primaries. And this is just about confirmation and detail of when it's coming, because, as you know, Labour have gone super into delivery mode since they won the election in July. And so this is about saying when we can expect that to come, and it's going to be piloted first. So it's going to start with 750 schools, and that'll start in April. And the pilot will be for 12 months. And a lot of people question why they need to do this. But listening to some head teachers yesterday, this is about them ironing out any wrinkles before a big nationwide rollout. This is about, do we have the space? Do we have the capacity? Because it's going to be 30 minutes, this breakfast club, so an extra 30 minutes in the morning. So it's space capacity, it's making sure the funding flows through in the right way. So they're going to...
Staffing.
It's
quite spenny to pay for 2.5 hours a week of extra staff.
And who's going to do it? Is that people who come in, or is that your existing staff but they're working longer hours? So they're going to iron all that out before it goes completely nationwide. But I guess it ticks two boxes, doesn't it? And a lot of people commented to this effect. So obviously, it ticks the box for those kids, because there are a lot of children still living in poverty in the UK, and it ticks the boxes of kids who need a breakfast in the morning to be able to concentrate, to get through 6 hours of a school day, and they wouldn't get it at home. This is brilliant. This is an opportunity for everyone in the morning to have a full stomach and learn. So that's great. But also, it feeds into the thing of parents who need to get to work, and that extra 30 minutes can make a real difference to a commute, to a start time, to just being able to go out and work. So there's kind of a double win with this. If the trial goes well, if the pilots go well, then it's double whammy.
Nice. And Tatton, what was our most popular post of the week?
I mean, this is a standard social media thing, because we post onto social media famously, and this was a petition about a general election, and I hadn't heard about it, and one of you two, I can't remember who it was, said, was it Charlotte? Oh, because she's our youngest person, so she's our hippest youngest person.
We got messages about it asking people to explain. And so I was like, we should probably explain this.
So I was told to explain a petition for another general election, and I just went, nope, not going to happen. I mean, no, I didn't say no, not going to happen to Charlotte in response to her asking me to explain on socials. I can't, because it was the number one post of the week. And this, I mean, it's really annoying for me, because it's a nonsense story. Some guy in a pub started it. The petition is just kind of like, quite like another general election. Lots of people have signed it, but then lots of people voted against Labour at the last election. So it's not a surprise that it's not even a sign that Labour have started badly. Like, there's more than 2 million people voted Reform at the last election. They all hate Labour. So if they're all signing this petition, it looks really bad. But also, however many million people voted Labour at the last election, it's nothing. It's a nothing story. But this is what gets attention, wherein the welfare bill reforms are huge. Assisted dying posts are huge. Smoking and vape. There's so much big stuff going on right now. This is a huge, earth-shattering month of politics, and the only things people will remember are stuff like some idiot with a petition.
A lot of signatories have come from outside the UK, which does make us question
Russian
its legitimacy.
interference.
Not just that, all over the place. You know, Musk has been onto it. He's not a British voter.
Like, it is a petition on the Parliament Petitions website, right?
Yeah.
And if the Parliament Petitions have very strict rules, and it was introduced to great fanfare 10 years ago, or however many years ago, that now you could do it specifically to Parliament straight off, and they would tell you if it was in the parliamentary rules or not as soon as you put it in. And the list of ones that aren't in the parliamentary rules, you can click on it somewhere, and it says we've refused these ones, and they are wonderful. They are wonderful things, like, you know, stuff about McDonald's breakfast later or whatever it is, like, just brilliant. But if the Parliament website accepts those signatures, then I accept them as signatures. So I don't really I think talking about their provenance is a bit like, well, that's not. You can't say that this petition is less valid than other petitions because it's got signatures from abroad, because Parliament are accepting those.
It's just there's been a lot of on social media people who are not in the UK saying you can use these postcodes to sign the petition and stuff. And I mean, yeah, it's still 2 million people, but it's not necessarily 2 million British voters even. But, you know, if you went round with
the whole thing's silly and doesn't mean anything.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's not how you get a general election.
No.
Right, it is time for the mailbag. This is the part of the podcast where we answer your questions. So, first up, Elle asks, will the assisted dying vote immediately change the law if it goes through?
Oh, is this a procedure question?
I think it is.
Yeah, so no, the answer is no. This is an act, this is a bill that is aiming to become an act of parliament. An act of parliament is what we would call a law, right? There's a new law when it becomes an act of parliament. And this is right at the beginning of its journey. So this is the first vote for, I mean, it's Parliament, so of course it's called the second reading. But it's it's the first debate and it's the first vote, because the first reading is when they just read out the name of the bill like a couple of weeks ago, right? So this is the second reading, and this vote really matters because this vote is a general principle. Do we approve the general principle of this bill? And if the Commons say yes to that, it's very, very, very super rare that it doesn't then go through in some form or other. Changes can be made, but if it passes, it's very, very, very likely that it will become law. And so it goes through, there's this vote, and then it goes to committee stage when a small group of MPs can make changes. Then it goes to report stage when the whole House can make changes and the committee report back the changes they've made. And then it goes to third reading when no more changes can be made, but there's another vote, a final vote from the Commons. And if they say yes, it goes to the House of Lords, who then have a second reading, a committee stage, a report stage, and a third reading. And if they've made changes, it goes back to the Commons, and the Commons have to discuss those changes, and they can say no. And if they say no, they go back to the Lords, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, they've all sorted it out, goes to the King, King whacks a signature on it, and there you have an Act of Parliament. And with this one, the assisted dying vote, that could all take, it's going to take a while to go through, but we're talking about maybe the summer. It might have gone through. So sometime in maybe mid 2025, if the vote passes tomorrow as we're recording, and I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. If it goes through, it will be an act of parliament or a law by middle of next year. But they're talking about then being very slow and very cautious. I think I've heard 2027 as a time that the actual change would take place. It's all about getting it right and getting it sorted. And presumably there will be court cases challenging it, no matter whether it goes through or doesn't go through, the other side will challenge it in the courts because it's such a huge thing and there's such passion behind each side that I'm assuming that there will be a legal challenge as well on some grounds. But if it's gone through Parliament, it's likely that the Supreme Court will say yes. But there's plenty of time for all those things to be done before 2027, which I think the year, and then it will take place. Should it pass the vote. And of course, if it loses that vote, that's it. That's the end of the process. It's done.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of confusion about that because a lot of people have talked about there not being a long time to debate because of the nature of the kind of bill and stuff. And they've been saying that as if, if it were voted through, it would just become law.
No, I disagree with you, Charlotte. I disagree with you. I think it is too short. I think
I'm not, but yeah, I
think a private member's bill without special treatment, and the government can give, if the government wanted to, they could give the private member's bill government time, but they don't want to do that because then that would be seen as backing the bill too much.
Exactly.
So it has to be squeezed into this Friday slot, and it is too short. Now, whether that should mean you vote against it or for it or whatever, I don't know, but I'm uncomfortable. I'm genuinely uncomfortable. Even though there are all the stages coming, I'm uncomfortable because that first vote changes everything. It's all about that initial vote. So even while changes can be made and we can debate and all that, 4 hours before this crucial yes or no vote is not enough.
I mean, I'm not even saying whether that's too short or not, but a lot of people are acting as if it will then immediately become law.
Yeah, sure.
And that's just not true. There's so much scrutiny to go through. And yeah, as you say, if it doesn't pass, nothing happens. Yeah. It's just the end.
There is a lack of awareness of parliamentary procedure, and of course I would say that because I love parliamentary procedure. But actually, it is important with things like this. Like, it matters.
Right. Anyway, Alice asks, what is a tourist tax and what does it do?
I love a tourist task. I love a tourist task. I love a tourist tax. I love it. Because you pitch up at a hotel and you get an extra £1 on your bill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, it's an extra £1. Like a hotel, like a nice hotel can cost, I don't know, like a Premier Inn's like £80 for a Premier Inn. Or maybe more, like in London. So a £1 on top of that doesn't make any difference. But everyone puts a £1 in. Everyone who comes and stays in your area puts a £1 in. Like you can have a tenner by the end of the day. Like maybe more. I love it.
It's good if it's ring fenced. If that money is, so the idea that if you're staying somewhere and you're only there for a short time and you are using facilities, I live in a tourist place and numbers swell in the summer, so you've probably got 3-4 times the amount of normal residents around us. Things still need to happen, bins still need to be emptied, but maybe instead of one person in a house, you've got 4 or 5 people staying using it as an Airbnb, So there is definitely more drain on resources in the 6 weeks of summer. And I guess the reason this question's come up is because Wales are considering it, aren't they? So we don't have it here. Yeah. But again, I'm kind of see the rationale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here in Whitstable, this is a tourist town.
I've had it in Manchester for a little while now.
It happens in Manchester, does it?
Yeah.
I don't understand the argument against. The argument against says, it'll put tourists off.
That's it, yeah.
But, like, I went on holiday to the Amalfi Coast a couple of years ago, and it was the most beautiful place. And I had to have €1 on every night I stayed there. Like, it didn't even... Sure, I'm not on a tight budget when I go on holiday. Maybe that extra €1 for 7 nights. I mean, it does add up, €7. That's the maths. maybe for some people that would make or break, and people wouldn't go to the Amalfi Coast anymore. I mean, like, there were plenty of people there. I don't know. I don't know if it really puts some people off. And maybe, like I say, maybe, you know what? Again, we're talking about people on the margins. People on the margins who just go, or I might stay one night shorter, because then that covers the, if you're staying in a hostel, that extra £1 might mean that you stay one night fewer and spend, whatever. But it's, people on the margins. But I generally support the idea.
Okay, Quoted T asks, any thoughts on the Irish election?
Not a huge amount. It's happening this week too. It's on Friday. So
how does it work, Diane?
Well, so practically, because
what's the system? What's the voting system?
Oh, it's PR. Well, STV, a single transferable vote that they have.
The best kind of PR.
Yeah. So
that's the one I understand the most.
And it's totally different. Party-wise, everything-wise. Like, I grew up in Northern Ireland, and still the Republic of Ireland politics is still slightly, hard for me to get my head around. Yet, saying that, this election is going to be fought on the same themes as the UK: cost of living, immigration. It's all the same stuff that the parties have been talking about. But the outgoing government's a coalition. So this is the tricky bit and the interesting bit. So the government that's just been in has been the two traditionally main parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and they're quite centrally, slightly, we'll call it that. And they've been in coalition along with the Greens to try and govern, because they've needed to. They've all needed to join up to even have a working government. And the big challenger to all of that is Sinn Féin. So Sinn Féin are an All-Ireland party. You might have heard of Mary Lou MacDonald, who is the president of Sinn Féin. She's quite a prolific figure. And she's hoping to kind of upset the political status quo. And she wants to be Ireland's first female Taoiseach Prime Minister, She wants to be, that would be a historic thing too. But for us, I guess the only part of the UK it's going to really, really impact is Northern Ireland. And only from the point of view that there's quite a lot of cross-border working groups. There's quite a lot of things that happen cross-border. So it's interesting. Be one to watch.
Because a few months ago, people were saying that Sinn Féin actually had a chance, but there's been a lot of issues within Sinn Féin then, hasn't there? So, could be one of the few countries who's had an election this year where the incumbent hasn't been kicked out. We will see. We love an election.
My thoughts on the Irish elections are that I really love the word Taoiseach. It's like my favourite word. So I'm looking forward to the results days, because I can say Taoiseach a lot.
Right, let's move on. This is the part of the podcast where we take a deeper dive into something. And this week we're back to our regular topic of PM Watch. It's Kia Watch. Woo! So, Tatton, what has Keir been up to this week?
He is having a tough old time. It's Keir Starmer. Like, we're talking about that petition earlier, and I mean, it's terrible, and it doesn't say anything at all. But it does add to the idea that he hasn't landed well. Like, it feels problematic because he hasn't landed well, because he's had the issues of there's so many, there's a load of independent MPs he's had to kick out because they voted against him. They got elected as a Labour MP, and then within weeks were kicked out of the Labour Party. Then Rosie Duffield left the Labour Party. and the winter fuel payments and the farmers and the national insurance rise and everything, businesses, like the work back to work welfare stuff. He's like, right, okay, we're going to get everyone into these businesses. And then the businesses are like, yeah, but we now have these extra rules and we have to pay more national insurance. We don't really want to employ more people. So it's the joined up government here it looks like it hasn't taken place. And it looks like, and a lot of people have heard this 22 billion and feel a bit sus about it. Like, is it really that? And it is true that some of that 22 billion was because of choices that Labour chose to make. So it feels a bit shady. It's all difficult for him. There is so many difficult things. And he's quite lucky because he's got no opposition. The Conservatives are still in a total state. Kemi Badenoch hasn't quite worked out how to use PMQs to any effect. Although her biscuit pun game was on point this year, this week even. Do check out. I'm going to go through it in detail on the SP show. Don't you worry, biscuit fans. I cannot wait for that. We have no opposition. She hasn't quite worked out how to use PMQs. I mean, she's an intelligent person. She's watched it enough times, but she's not quite nailed exactly how to do it. No one cares what the rest of them say. I was watching in the chamber, and Chris Philp, who was quite a high-profile member of the Conservative Party now, as the Shadow Home Secretary, and he was just kind of shouting, and Yvette Cooper was literally laughing at him, just like, what are you doing? The media can be cross with him, and Jeremy Clarkson can be cross with him, but none of it makes a difference because he's got this whopping great majority. He can just say to everything that you throw at him, he can just say, we're making the tough decisions. And then everyone go, oh yeah, well, they are tough decisions. Well, he can say that and it'll go away. I mean, it will. He has 5 years, 4 years, whatever it is, till the next election. If things get better, if the economy grows, if we have a higher employment rate, if we're more productive, if we're happier, if all of these things happen, he will sail to another election win, and none of this, all of this will be lost like tears in the rain.
I think it's that realisation for people, especially people who voted Labour this time, that things, like we talked about how long, we just talked about how long, if assisted dying does go through on Friday, how long it's going to take to become a law. And I think people are starting to realise that voting Labour back in July isn't somehow going to mean overnight you're, super better off and the trains work and, things take a long time, and it's been 5 months. And I think that a lot of the frustration around Keir Starmer and his team has been that people wanted to see immediate results and don't get how it works.
I think you're right, but I think it's good things take a long time, and bad things happen very, very quickly. Winter fuel payment gone, like that.
Yeah.
If you're a farmer, your dreams of passing your farm down to your child gone. They can go super fast, right? Even if there is a U-turn on that at some point, but making things happen. The breakfast clubs. They're starting in a small number of schools. That's going to be a year. If that works, they have to work out funding, do it for another. So it takes time to make changes. This welfare changes, which some of them may be good, some of them may not be good, whatever. They will take time to get people into work. And then when people are in work, it will take time for them to feel the money in their pocket. And then, so bad stuff happens quickly. Good stuff takes some time. So it's no surprise, given that after the quick stuff, we're all in a grump.
Yeah. Give them time. Right. That's all that's been going on this week, but it's time to look into our crystal balls. Diane, what is going to be going on in the next week?
Well, I struggle to think of one for next week, but I don't think we've heard the last of the farming protests. And there was another slow tractor ride out this week, and the NFU have just updated all their socials saying that it's not the last of their lobby. That one day in London wasn't it. So I think that's just a watch and see.
Tatton, what's in your crystal ball?
Well, next week, the bill that will raise employers' national insurance goes through Parliament. So it's a really interesting time to think about tax and spend and what we want and what it means to make an election pledge about tax, and all of these different things. And listen, I'm gonna get really into that, like I say, on the SP show on Saturday. Do join me then. It's really interesting. I think the word tax puts people off. Certainly the words national insurance puts people off. I mean, it sounds so boring. But these changes will have an impact on so many people. So, yeah, do join me for that.
Yes, and join us next week for, I'm sure, more on that too. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Tatton and Diane.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.